Among the questions that the Canadian students asked me, there were some about the relation between a communist state and the other parts of the world. And also some questions were concentrated on the image of the world in the minds of the inhabitants in a communist state. So I think that we have to part the answer in two different regions. The official political image of relations between the communist countries. This is one issue, and the other is how people lived with this image, and did they have other images about the world than the propaganda were providing them with. So, the official propaganda image of relations between the Romanian Communist regime and the other communist countries and the rest of the world was a very simple one. All the people in the communist bloc were people of brothers, they loved each other, they supported each other, and especially Soviet Union helped everyone. This was the image. And then there was the other image, the terrible capitalist world on the other side of the Iron Curtain. That was the enemy. There was a world of misery, of strikes, class struggle, and very unfortunate leaves. But this propaganda image could not cover reality. We had moments when we all at once became aware of very strong conflicts into the communist empire. For instance, in '68, when the invasion of Czechoslovakia was fulfilled by Soviet army with help from other armies in the eastern countries, Romania was not. The leader of Romania, the well-known Ceausescu, was on the balcony of the Central Committee of the Communist Party, shouting against the Soviet Union and the invasion, which made all people in the whole country very, very disturbed. We were expecting the Soviet tanks to get into Romania too. That didn't happen. But we had 2 or 3 weeks of very strong tension in the country. And during these weeks, the media, the Romanian media, were allowed to describe the situation in Czechoslovakia as it was, with conflicts, with students protesting, with people trying to get on the Soviet tanks and trying to convince the Soviet soldiers that they were invaders, and so on and so forth. And then after this shock period of relative freedom, there came a time of silence, of complete silence. Nothing more in the press or in the party talks, in the speeches from the leaders. Nothing about Czechoslovakia, nothing about the Russian army and the other armies getting into Prague. We did not know what happened. There were rumors about meetings between Ceausescu and the Soviet leaders. Somewhere negotiations must have been fulfilled. And Romania paid its short time of rebellion by this heavy, heavy silence. There were also other rumors about real battles around Romania, especially at the border between Romania and Hungary, of tanks fighting each other. But these were things people whispered to each other. Someone knew an officer, someone knew a widow after someone had died during such a battle. These things were never clarified as long as the communist regime was going on. And I'm sure that there are a lot of things to find out about the history of relations in between communist countries. And this will be a very interesting task for young research to go in and to try to find out what really happened, in which parts of the countries these battles have been taking place. And this is part of history which has to be constructed, built, because we do not have enough material about it. And now it is possible to go into the old documents, into the archives, and to study this problem. So this was the relation between the official image of brotherhood and help and the real image. In fact, there was going on a struggle between different leaders in different parts of the communist empire. And this struggle could be not at all ideological or political. It could have been also a simple personal hate story. People who knew the leaders of the Central Committee in Romania told me that Ceausescu and Brezhnev never could get close to each other because they started to hate each other when they were studying in Moscow in their youth. And this is a very possible story. Now, another story is a story of the very strange personality of this dictator, Ceausescu, because he did not go on the balcony of the Central Committee building to protest about against Soviet Union and the invasion of Prague in Czechoslovakia because of principles or ideas. What made him go there was sure a big prevention, an act of prevention. He didn't want to be to lose his position. He rebelled because he felt threatened. He felt the great threat coming from the Soviet leaders. And there is another story also to be told. This person, the dictator, Nicolae Ceausescu, he was not at all someone who could create the feeling of an intelligent, deep thinking presence. He liked very much to speak, he had the passion of long speeches, hour after hour. But there was no idea in his speeches. There were only empty words and very formalistic and exaggerated words. So when you met him through the media, by reading his speeches or listening to them, which all people were compelled to do in spite of the fact that it was impossible to listen, because it was empty. Nothing happened. But you got the impression of a completely deep stupidity. And when you look at his activity, political activity, you cannot forget some very important facts. This very bad speaker was a great mediator. It was through Ceausescu that the contacts between the United States of America and Mao's China were established. And Nixon even visited Romania before going to China. And this was something which was completely out of the political, ideological, usual way of working in our countries. Ceausescu was also a very shrewd person in manipulating disinformation. The Western world had a long time a much too positive idea about him because he knew how to manipulate the Western media. He was also able to befriend with political leaders which were enemies. He was a very good friend of Arafat, but he had extremely good relations with the State of Israel. So there is a lot to be studied about what happened with the state of Romania, communist Romania, and the relation on the international arena during this period. And I hope that some researchers will in future, not a very far away future, go into the archives and look at some of the moments of great changes in communist Romania. There was such a moment in the year of 64, before Ceausescu became the leader of Romania, still under the leading of Gheorghe Udeș. That was a moment when the whole Soviet army and the whole army of so-called counselors, Soviet counselors, who were present in factories, in ministries, in big important institutions, all of them left Romania. And we never got an explanation about it, what happened, in which way they succeeded to persuade the Soviet leaders that Romania would stay in the empire and be a very nice and obedient subject, so to speak. At the same time, a lot of political prisoners were freed. So this was a period of relative liberalization of Romania, and we are not at all aware of what happened behind the changes. What was the cause of the Soviet withdrawal from Romania, which created a change, which created very, very good possibilities for Ceausescu to act as a leader very interested in freedom and liberalization. Now, how did people live with the image of the world created by the propaganda? This question is supposed to get different answers when we look at different countries. The East European new communist countries after the Second World War, Poland and Romania and Hungary and Czechoslovakia and even Bulgaria in some respect, they had a long history behind of contacts with the whole world. People had been traveling, people had been studying, people had even tried to get to the United States to get some money there and come back. There was this kind of wave migration between these countries and the rest of the world. So for the inhabitants of the communist countries had living memories about very good contacts with very nice countries and very nice cultures on the other side of the Iron Curtain. So they did not believe the propaganda. There was even an exaggerated feeling for the beauty and the richness of life on the other side, which has its explanation. It's a very simple explanation. People had a difficult everyday life. A lot of things were missing in the shops, and they knew that their relatives who lived in France or in Germany or in West Germany or in England or in Italy had a much better life. We got even sometimes presents coming from our relatives in other countries, and the things we got were always objects of admiration and deep respect. So this question about the image of the other side, the capitalist world, gets a completely different answer if we think, for example, of Soviet Union, where the long time of propaganda and indoctrination had given results. Very few Soviet citizens were allowed to go abroad. To have relatives abroad was almost a crime. Not to speak about trying to marry someone who came from the Western world. This was really something extremely, extremely dangerous. So when I now read the memories of Gorbachev, which is a very interesting lecture, I discovered that even he, who was a leader in a district, in a province of Soviet Union, a leader in the party, he did not know what was going on in the world. This is a fact he recognizes himself. He says that it was very interesting to travel when he became a very important person in the Communist Party, because the information we got earlier about the rest of the world was not at all satisfying. And then when he discusses what happened in Prague, with the Prague Spring, he recognizes that he accepted the official explanation, that he believed that the capitalist countries tried to manipulate the leading of Czechoslovakia and to create conflicts in the communist bloc. So he approved the invasion. As late as 1968, one of the most important personalities of the Communist Party in Soviet Union did not understand what his leadership was doing with his people, with his soldiers, and with the people of Czechoslovakia. And if we are to think of China or North Korea or the Cambodian Pol Pot time, then we cannot suppose anything other than people did not know anything about the rest of the world. They were prisoners not only physically in their countries, they were mentally prisoners in the propaganda. And the propaganda had got, or at least in China, deep, deep into the inner life and the thinking and the conscience of all citizens. And this is tragic. Thank you for this time.